I'll dispense with the lengthy resume reading of my esteemed panel. I think, gosh, most of us here work for them in some way or another. But just a quick introduction from my left and down the line. Jeff Kendall from Atkins, DJ Johnson from Honeywell, also the chair of EFCOG, and also has brought, I mean, generally it's polite if you bring snacks, you bring enough for the whole class. But you know, he's sugaring up but it's interesting, DJ did not bring a fork. So please enjoy watching DJ eat his cake with his fingers. Heatherly Dukes from BWXT, Jim Blankenhorn from Amentum, JD Dowell from Fluor, Michael Lempke from HII. So this is a panel that we like to do every year, and I should have said, I'm sorry, I'm Marty Schneider, president of Longenecker and Associates. Happy to be here. Happy to be your game show host on the last panel of the day and the last conference, the last day of the conference. But this is a panel we like to do every year, and we really try to hear from these leaders in our industry to kind of wrap up the discussion that we heard and really get their perspective from a 10,000-foot level. You know, all of these incredibly important, busy folks have broader portfolios than just DOE. And I think we can really benefit from their perspective as they look across their respective portfolios, you know, to talk about a lot of the issues that we've gotten into this week. So, Jeff, I want to start with you. As you think about, you know, that broader portfolio and all of the exciting projects and challenges, you know, across your company and across, you know, our industry today, where does DOE fit, you know, against what we're seeing in new fields like new nuclear and AI? You know, how does it work with DOE kind of blending into that broader market?
Appreciate the question, Marty, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you to ECA for hosting. So this question, Marty, it is front of mind for myself leading AtkinsRéalis, and I think for a lot of us up on the panel. You know, not only are we facing this wave of new nuclear and the demand for our commercial nuclear services, but you know, we're at the tail end of this super cycle. So the kind of the slowing pace for major procurements is forcing us to examine our priorities, and it's something me and my leadership team are working on daily. I mean, it is a big issue for us right now, but we look at it as an opportunity. You know, we have significant demand that's being driven by the power needs, both domestically and globally. This could be on the new build front here in the US. This could be on the fuel cycle front. So we're balancing it. We are, you know, making decisions on where resources are going to be allocated. But for us, I mean, I can unequivocally say DOE is the backbone of our US nuclear business. And it's going to remain so going forward, despite this growth and the need for commercial nuclear services and this slowing in the pace of the procurement cycle. So, you know, we're trying to balance those dynamics, and we think that we can do it. Like, I think a lot of it depends on the structure of the company, the way you're organized. For us in the US, we are, as Marty said, you know, a diversified offering between commercial services and federal services. And we see that there's a lot of connectivity between the two when it comes to determining where we are going to allocate resources. So it's a never-ending thing that we're dealing with right now, but we feel like we can have great success. It's just about the pacing of everything, how we pace resources, where we allocate our resources. And the other thing that we see at play that you're going to hear about today, and you've heard about the past 2 days, is this growing connectivity between new nuclear and DOE. Whether it's the AI data centers that are going to be sited, the SMRs that are going to fuel them, or the fuel facilities that are likely going to be at times sited on these facilities where we have a significant presence. Kind of that greater nexus between the two will allow us to be more nimble and strategic in how we allocate our resources to address it.
You know, Jim, I know that this is something that, you know, Amentum is dealing with as well as your, you know, your market, your portfolio becomes increasingly international. I think I recently saw picture of Mark Whitney and the president of Poland, if I am not incorrect. So tell us a little bit about this balance from your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. I feel like this is one of those questions, testing whether I know the right answer when given. But
I'll let you know.
yeah, please do. But I think, look, there's been a lot of dialogue, a lot of discussion, a lot of success stories told here over the last 2 days, which, shouldn't leave any doubt in anybody's mind about Amentum's commitment and priority to DOE and accomplishment of their mission. Amentum's strategic focus and priority remain aligned with DOE's mission. The new fields, whether it's coming up through the Department of Energy or whether it's commercial, out there like new nuclear, SMRs, mega reactors, micro reactors, data centers. That's all exciting, additions, not just to the DOE opportunities portfolio, but to the global nuclear resurgence portfolio that is certainly within Amentum's growth strategy, and I'm sure it's in all of my colleagues' companies' growth strategies as well. The shortage of imminent major DOE EM procurements doesn't dissuade us in any way. In fact, we look at it as quite the opportunity because it allows us for this given year to come much more in alignment with the department's emphasis on efficiency and acceleration. So we have the opportunity to concentrate on contract efficiencies, operational and delivery excellence, innovation and technology development and investment, while at the same time, positioning ourselves as a strategic partner for the new initiatives around both within DOE and globally. I think we're fortunate, Amentum's fortunate to be in a position where we don't have to make a priority decision. We've got sufficient capabilities and capacity and bandwidth to service both of these markets with the best and brightest. The Department of Energy is prioritizing, as I said, and emphasizing acceleration and efficiency in nuclear cleanup and environmental management. And really what they're doing is they're looking at completing, the Manhattan era project life cycle and positioning the government for the start of the next life cycle of nuclear projects with the new age of energy. So again, I would just say Amentum is committed to and continues to remain committed and maintain a strong emphasis on DOE as a core market and a priority client. But you're also going to see Amentum very active and very engaged in not just the United States endeavors to be energy and AI dominant, but also to support the global resurgence of nuclear.
JD?
Yeah, I was just going to add, and Fluor likewise with Amentum and everybody up here on the panel. We're definitely committed and dedicated to the EM mission. It's where we've got our core competencies. There's much work left to be done there. But as I look at everything we've talked about in the last 2 days, it looks like, in a lot of from previous experience, that the department is going to an enterprise management framework. And so that emphasis on what we've been doing for the last decade, 50 years plus, and now are looking to the future, we're not only bringing efficiencies to the work we have today, but we're also looking at how to bring the nuclear renaissance tomorrow. So which I don't think we're in a renaissance yet, but we're getting there. And the point is not that we can all look at our other business lines and have work that plays off of the nuclear that we've developed with EM and other missions in DOE. But now in this enterprise structure, DOE is bringing us opportunities as well. And what I mean by that is that EM, NNSA, nuclear fission, nuclear energy, those things are all coming together, and they're actually presenting us with other commercial opportunities at the same time. So it plays off the natural abilities that we have in EM, but it also brings us new work on the sites that we exist in or in adjacent locations, in adjacent markets, that we can actually bring those skills to bear. So from the standpoint of work, think about it. The government's recent executive orders asked for 300 gigawatts, and that changed to 400 gigawatts about a week later. Between now and 2050, there's going to be so much work out there when the renaissance hits that we're going to be scrambling for resources, and that's exactly what I think DOE is doing with the enterprise approach. They're trying to bring not only what we're doing in this complex today, but also bringing those skills to the rest of the story, which is really emphasizing an accelerated nuclear renaissance.
And I think a lot of you have touched on this, right? Jeff did, JD, you did as well, right? That, you know, there's this increased emphasis, not just on we have a federal business or we have a nuclear business or we have an international business, but they touch and they overlap and they enable each other in so many ways. And one of the things we've talked a lot about over the last couple of days is this idea of, you know, the end state, you know, as we talk so much about the EM end state, right? But this idea that we're remediating this land for a purpose, right? To unleash American energy or to enable other kind of beneficial reuse. So Heatherly, I'm really interested as you look across your projects in particular, you know, what are how can the contracting community, the corporate parents, how can we, supercharge this beneficial reuse at our sites?
So one, I'm super happy that the conversation has gotten interesting on beneficial reuse. I think what we're doing with General Matter at Paducah is just a huge step forward. And so some of the suggestions that I would make would start with DOE, potentially with how they do some of their future contracting. And this could be done either through an in-states contract or it could be done through other types of contracts. But I've always felt like EM should be more of a bridge, doing things like creating that next mission or ability to bring jobs to these communities, particularly the small sites, because they're so, that the communities have built themselves around a lot of these missions. And so if you really want to keep the cleanup accelerated, people have to know there's that next job, right? And so we've given it a lot of airtime in the past, but it feels like now we're really moving in a direction that gets us there. So one of the ways that we could do that is not that there's a lot more in-state contracts coming up, but we still have the DDR mechanism, and at some point we'll have landfill cleanup and we'll have Paducah come up again. But have that be part of the contract. What are you going to do, corporations, to benefit the community and help DOE accelerate this cleanup and do beneficial reuse and make it like part of the scoring criteria, right? Because we have companies up here and out there that are doing some amazing things with SMRs, with microreactors, with all types of technology, AI, machine learning, et cetera. And so I just think it would be a huge opportunity for the department to tap into that and get some real bang for the buck on these proposals by doing that. We've introduced it before in some of our proposals, but it wasn't really necessarily a great fit with the scoring criteria. So that would be one. Another idea would be even in the existing in-state contracts, it probably wouldn't be quite as attractive as it would be at the beginning of a proposal. But why not put out some task orders that say, what can you do by working with the community to enhance this beneficial reuse and actually make it part of the contract similar to what it's not the same as what they've just done at Ports and Paducah. It's a part of the contract, but something more specific where we have to write a proposal and then DOE gets to really weigh in on the benefits of that. And then that would really make you work with the stakeholders and things of that nature, even probably as part of that, as that task order. So I know that's probably not what most people thought was going to come out of my mouth, but
Well, listen, I think there's one thing we've all learned, right? In DOE land, if it's not in the contract, it doesn't happen, right? And so I love the idea of driving this through the contract. So JD, as you look across Fluor's portfolio, I mean, what other ideas do you see?
Well, I think, on that theme about enterprise management, that's a business proposition, really. And when you think about that, what's different about today is that this administration has a bias for action. And one thing I have to say up front, though, with a bias for action, with the focus on efficiencies, our fundamental priority is safety. So we always have to make sure that we're safe, and we're driving that safety as we look for these efficiencies, as we look for business opportunities that will free up money, free up for more work, and also the focus on nuclear renaissance. But when I think of this, I think of Portsmouth. I know Joel's not here, but I see Robert Edwards is here, and Jeremy Davis works at the site. Portsmouth is a perfect example of the ways that contractors can bring value. It started, before the last 6 months when we've seen executive orders that are driving us to an acceleration and a bias for action. You were typically doing things that were engaging the community, communicating a lot. You had Portsmouth was a challenge from a standpoint over the last 10 years. We had to bring that community on board to the mission. And now they're super excited about what's going to happen as we develop and free up land for the future missions up there. And so not only is it what contractors can bring directly, which is things like putting in a P6, bringing in at Southern Ohio, they have the Southern Ohio Diversity Initiative, SOI. They're the drivers for the community involvement on future development issues. That's really powerful to have your community driving that. And so the contractor, in our role, we've been an enabler for that with DOE. And so there's direct support. There's also indirect support. Things like the relationships we've built with the community can be turned over to the future clients on that facility. The regulatory relationships with the state of Ohio, those don't go away with national imperatives. There's still a regulatory group in the state of Ohio, the Ohio EPA. And so those kinds of things are laying a beachhead, if you will, for that future development. And that brings efficiency, that brings more cost savings, that saves money for the government. That's exactly what we're doing with that bias for action. The last thing I'll leave you on is the adjacent market that we're bringing forward. For instance, Fluor right now is working on the Centrus contract and bringing Centrus back to life on the Portsmouth site, right next to the Portsmouth site. SODI has about probably a dozen other hot, kind of clients on the hook that they're evaluating right now. But Centrus is the real deal. There's money there. Hopefully there's money coming from the government in the future for that endeavor. And that's the enabler that I'm talking about. Everyone on this stage has opportunities, and those opportunities are going to come. We have to have some agility and be able to attack those things when they come at it, and support them with the same efficiencies we're trying to drive in today's mission.
So when we think about streamlining and efficiencies, right, I feel like, so much of what we're talking about these days is how the department can do business differently, right? How do we run DOE? How do we run EM more like a business? And so, I'm really interested to hear your perspective. Maybe we'll start with DJ, both with his Honeywell hat and his EFCOG chair hat. Where do you see the main opportunities and the challenges for EM in streamlining the way we do business in a way that's going to really yield some near-term results?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. And I think if you guys remember from the first day of the workshop, when we challenged all of you to think about how to challenge the assumptions of the things that we are either trying to do today or things that we are trying to do in the future, I think that is spot on for how we're going to help to influence the Department of Energy and drive to not necessarily operating like a business, but take what's best from business and incorporate those into into to the DOE and more specifically into the environmental management area. So in the spirit of what we advocate from an EFCOG perspective, we are really pushing the department to think about how to best use AI and digital tools. And so as I was just sitting here, I said, well, okay, well, let's just ask Copilot, what does it think about things that we could do to help move things forward and accelerate? And I'm going to use a specific example. I'm going to use the True Waste Waste Processing Center that we are working on at UCOR. And I said, well, what can we do as it relates to TWPC? And so here's what it told me. It says, look, AI-driven waste characterization. That's the first thing that it came up with is we know we have to characterize waste. And are there ways or tools that we can use from an AI-driven perspective that would allow us to speed up the waste processing, certification, improve accuracy, and reduce human error? Second, predictive maintenance and equipment optimization. So applying predictive analytics to basically look at all the equipment, whether it's remote handling systems, whether it's ventilation units, having sensors within an AI-driven performance model to optimize downtime. Smart logistics and shipping planning. So one of the things we are challenging ourselves with is DOE transportation and synchronizing that when we are using and packaging that true waste and sending that to WIP. Using a digital twin of TWPC, creating that digital twin so you can simulate operations. What kind of upgrades could you make to it? And balancing out the equipment usage. Fifth one, advanced data analytics and dashboards. Make those interactive, and so you can use those to identify trends within the operations, and then robotic processing automation, cybersecurity compliance monitoring. The point is there's opportunities to use those tools, and we're trying to use those not only within Honeywell, but also the EFCOG is really trying to push what are the best practices that we can use and that people are using at various sites and bring those to all of the other sites to show how those processes and those tools can be used. So I think that's a really ripe area, and you hear that from this DOE administration is AI being part of the next Manhattan Project. So let's demonstrate that to them, that there are opportunities to use AI and digital tools to do those things.
All right. Jeff?
So well said, DJ. I don't know how you got Copilot on your phone, but my security team would have me in handcuffs, I believe.
My personal phone, not my government phone.
But no, DJ hit this approach. We've been talking about it for some time, especially since this new administration came in through EFCOG starting, I believe, in November, about taking a more business-minded approach at the EM and the DOE level. And, I know that's been said over the years, and there's been concepts around that with each new administration, but I think there is momentum this go around. There is buy-in. The engagement has been positive. As far as the challenges, the challenges remain unchanged for our sites. This is a very difficult, complicated, complex mission. We work in a constrained funding environment. You have difficult regulatory environments from New Mexico to Hanford, everywhere else. You also deal with, certain, I'll call it procurement and contracting inertia at the sites sometimes that we have to fight and try to overcome. And at each of the sites, there's such a diverse group of stakeholders. They're rarely aligned, but some of the things DJ mentioned related to AI implementation, bringing LLMs to bear, like we are doing at the corporate level and globally on these DOE contracts. I know it's not always easy, but as we continue to pump money into our annual budgets for increased cybersecurity measures so we can implement these technologies and solutions, that's a way we can make significant headway. The only other thing I would mention, Marty, from our perspective, we are very keen on bringing to bear next level robotics. This is something we're doing in Europe. Within the next 6 months, we will do this at Hanford. We will hopefully do this at Savannah River. And that will unlock a lot of opportunities to reduce risks for the workforce and potentially bring to bear other modular systems that we use in the non-nuclear field all throughout the world at our DOE sites.
We've talked about new nuclear. We've talked about reuse. We've talked about AI. We've talked about streamlining our business practices. But it's important to remember, right, that the work is the work, right? And I'm interested, one of the things that we started this conference with an idea that, we need a venue to highlight some of our successes, right? We started this conference off on Wednesday with a panel that kind of looked at three of the big successes over the last year in EM. And so, I'm interested, Michael, maybe we'll start with you, as we think about the major opportunities for success in DOE over the next year. What are we going to be talking about at this conference in 2026? What are we going to be banging the drum about? What are the major opportunities that you see for success this next year?
Yeah, so I just would like to say that from this point forward, Jim and I will be in the bar and ChatGPT will be answering your questions. I didn't realize that was okay, DJ, but Honeywell leading the way as usual.
Would
I
you like some
would,
cake, Michael? I'll bring some down to you. Sound
I think Michael Lemke needs a snack.
hangry right now, so
Separate
I think he needs something to eat.
Yeah, you separated us,
Get
but
the
you gave
fan
us
a-
each
get
a
the fan a
microphone.
Snickers.
So a couple of things. So I think I would approach it from a little bit different perspective. I mean, rather than what we'll be talking about, I thought I'd think about with you all a little bit of the leadership that we need to have so that when we get to this point next year, we've actually taken the best advantage we can of the opportunities before us. So I think there are some things that we have a unique opportunity in this particular window of time to really work on as a team. So I think, true partnering and mission alignment is actually what facilitates agility and execution. So as you sit and you think about how we go faster, how we're more effective and how we're more efficient, I think that starts with alignment on the mission. And if you hear some of the things we've talked about, there is a danger in our business because of the proceduralization and the adherence to those procedures where paper can become the product. So as leaders, we have to ensure that paper is never the product, execution of the mission is. And I think that aligns with all of us agreeing, site by site, perhaps, on the unique attributes of the mission where we have to drive alignment. Along with that, I do think we have to have a commitment to throw the flag and highlight and then eliminate non-value added steps. And we have so many of them that we just do them sometimes without thinking about it because we've always done it that way. So I think as leaders, we need to drive that sense of urgency and foster again that questioning attitude as to why are we doing it this way and how do we eliminate the steps that lend the least value to the overall process of executing the mission again. The other thing I would just suggest to us is you can't have excellence without focus, right? So excellence without focus just doesn't happen. So in our drive for instilling urgency or a bias towards action, as you've appropriately pointed out, JD, there is also the opportunity that we scatter our energy and that we don't accomplish as much as we could. So we need to make sure that we don't mistake activity for productivity, right? We don't make moving fast lead to a safety issue like you talked about, JD, again, or that we're moving so quickly we can't focus on the things to drive the mission forward. So as I kind of go through there, I think we have an opportunity to rebaseline and refocus on true partnership and alignment, eliminating those unnecessary steps. And I think we have an administration and a set of leaders that are uniquely interested and biased toward acting on those recommendations to streamline and eliminate meaningless steps. Continue to stay focused. And the last thing I think is an output of that really has to happen is that as a larger team, we have to get out of the nickel and dime business. We need not to argue about $10,000 in compensation for a key person for 9 months. We should realize that that's a waste of time, energy, and money, and we could execute the mission. We need to stop working on unallowables. We need to not have people working in facilities that don't emulate and model our commitment to safety. Right? It's hard to tell people we're committed to safety when they walk up and down crumbling steps every day or walk on sidewalks that are not safe to walk on. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to hone in and focus. And I think when we get to next year, if we do some of those things, right, focus on those 4 key areas, we can coalesce around the real opportunities, which are going to be aligned to the mission, execute them as a team, continue to drive excellence into everything we do and really focus on the big stuff and get some big stuff done together. So that's what I would suggest.
Jim, what about from your perspective, opportunities for success over the next year?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and call the shot. You know, a year from now, we're going to be sitting in here talking about the successes that have occurred at the Hanford site. DF Law is going to start. DF Law is going to start processing waste for the first time in the history of that site. The other contracts on the site will have made significant progress in waste management, in D&D, tank retrievals coming out of the H2C team. And it won't just be Hanford. I mean, we're going to see successes at the Savannah River site in terms of waste processing. We're going to see continued successes at the cleanup sites, Oak Ridge, Portsmouth, Paducah, West Valley, OSMS. So I mean, I think we're going to be sitting here next year with a number of successes that the department and the contractor community are going to be able to be very proud of. I do think there are a number of opportunities to enable or continue to enable those successes programmatically. I think that there are opportunities in workforce development. There are opportunities in modernization and revitalization of aging infrastructure. And then there's opportunities related to the change. You know, we've had a lot of discussion about efficiency and acceleration and new governance and acting as a business, incorporation of AI and technology tools and innovation. And then again, I think we're going to see continued opportunities in the new fields, data centers and new nuclear on federal property. The first opportunity for success, I think, is going to be a stronger focus on mission performance and implementing a new governance model that prioritizes mission performance and running the organization as a business. And you know, DJ did a great job laying out what that might look like. But you know, all while maintaining the requisite safety, security, compliance, and quality expectations. Second opportunity is ripe in the efficiency and acceleration emphasis that we're seeing from the government. So completing the current nuclear life cycles, as I mentioned earlier, preparing to support the age of energy and the nation's race for energy and AI dominance. Regarding efficiency, as Heatherly and DJ and others have laid out, you know, the single largest opportunity is in deployment of innovation, deployment of AI, deployment of robotics. There are needs across the department's life cycle for applications, whether it's in design, engineering, procurement, construction, commissioning, operations and maintenance, and then all of the business functions and management functions. I mean, it's just, there's opportunities everywhere you look to deploy technologies that will increase the efficiency and accelerate the mission accomplishment. I think the most disruptive condition to cost, to schedule, to efficiency, to safety, and to the mission is the state of affairs with our infrastructure and facilities and the aging infrastructure that we have. And so I think we have to seize the opportunity in the next year to ensure that the right emphasis, the right priority, the right funding is allocated for the modernization and revitalization of critical facilities and infrastructure that we need for the next several decades, and that we need to maintain our nuclear and technical dominance. Finally, I would say from an opportunities perspective, we simply have to continue to invest in the development and the experience and knowledge of the workforce, not just now, but for the future. There's any number of great reasons why we need to do that, but it's our obligation and our responsibility to ensure that we provide the workforce now and for the next 50 years that can safely, compliantly, timely, and efficiently deliver the mission. So, wrapping all that up, there are a number of areas, opportunities, in addition to mission delivery, that all of our companies will be focused on, maintaining strength, building trust and confidence in delivery, proactively engaging in the deployment of AI and robotics and machine learning technologies, workforce development, proving ourselves to be investment worthy. And that goes back to an evolving governance structure and moving things back more towards a business mentality. So, there's an awful lot to unpack in all of that, but I think that I really think there are a great number of opportunities that these companies are the best suited to go after, and quite frankly, the best prepared to deliver.
We'll go here to Heatherly and then over to you, JD.
Hey, so hang with me on this because it's going to be a shout out. But I just want to address that we as contractors and corporate recognize that DOE has been through chaos this year. And you're still going through it. And there's just been a huge turnover in head knowledge and things of that nature. And yet, we were able to bring down a reprocessing plant. We were able to do D&D and at enrichment facilities. We've optimized SWPF at Savannah River site. We've prepped Hanford to go into and got all kinds of systems ready to go that is going to take us to that next stage of performance, like Jim just said. And places like landfill cleanup, right, which has some of the biggest challenges for a small project that they're trying to get through, and probably the leanest DOE staff I've ever seen. DOE was able still to support the core of the mission. And so as you're going to continue to go through this chaos that eventually I'm hoping is going to be a metamorphosis, think about how you did that. How DOE was able to still support that mission and make the decisions and the approvals that would have, because they had to be done much more effectively and efficiently than they have been in the past years. So I know you're still trying to catch your breath with all the changes, but you did an amazing job supporting the contractors this year. I've been truly amazed. So as you go through and you're thinking about how to be business-like, I think you're figuring it out. Hopefully you codify it.
JD?
I'd have to say, second that too, Heatherly, because it's not morale building when you've got a lot of churn or, activities that, there's a level of uncertainty of what's going on. So I think I'm going to add something conceptually, and it's the lessons learned from Plant Vogtle, which is an adjacent kind of market that we have. But I was at a conference with the senior vice president for construction for Southern Company, and he said the number one thing, building on Michael's theme, that was the most inefficient thing when they went from 16 billion to 34 billion on that job, was that they didn't partner early enough. They didn't come to a collaborative way of approaching the work. And so, like we've talked about up here, and I think Jim did a very thorough job of that, it's a target-rich environment for us from a standpoint of contractors. And from that standpoint, I think we're all going to try and bring our best game to what else can we do? What other innovations can we bring? What other, company policies, commercial approaches can we bring to bring that innovation? Also, adding on Jim's talk about goals for next year, I think we're going to see 3 reactors actually operated by the Department of Energy and regulated by the Department of Energy in a pilot program in Idaho. That's amazing. That may be the start of the nuclear renaissance, and we'll be talking about implementation plans then. Again, think enterprise here, enterprise framework. What are we trying to deliver as a Department of Energy and a country in commercial nuclear? And I think that's the most powerful thing I think I've seen with this change of administration.
A couple of you have touched on it, right? That, there's a lot of shifts happening. One of the shifts is in that governance model, right? In how you navigate and conduct oversight at the right level. And so, Jeff, as you think about how industry and DOE kind of work through this governance model, how do you make sure that you're getting the right level, you're striking the right balance to enable all of the things that we've talked about?
No, I appreciate that, Marty. So oversight has been at the forefront with this group, with the Department of Energy, I think going back to December or January, when we were all summoned to sort of the first meeting with the new guard. And it was, this is coming. We've seen what's happened to the federal workforce. Heather Lee characterized it appropriately. How can we work with you to be better at oversight? And we had some pretty candid conversations. I think we were, very straightforward in saying any requirement that requires the expenditure of resources, money, or time that does not contribute to the delivery of the bottom line mission should be examined and should be eliminated. So we've delivered multiple white papers on that front. And I think a lot of obviously oversight is absolutely essential in this industry, but the consensus is that it has to evolve, and the time to do that would be now, given all these dynamics we're talking about and this acceleration, the commercial marketplace, which is bleeding over into our federal marketplace. We obviously talk about how it should be risk informed. And I know one of the themes we've been discussing as contractors is let's shift the dynamic and oversight. Give us a clear mandate. We will determine how it gets implemented. And then the oversight function can be a mutual, collaborative, shared responsibility. So that's what we want to work toward as contractors. That's what we're focused on at the sites that we manage and that we operate on with AtkinsRéalis. And, if there is alignment on many fronts, not the least of which is oversight, you can have tremendous success. I think you all heard Zach speak about it earlier on OSMS. We've never been more aligned with that customer than we are now. And reducing bureaucracy related to oversight and being smarter, a little bit more nimble in how we do it is a key part of that.
JD?
Yeah, I think this is a great question because I think we're seeing it right now. It's not settled yet where it's going to land. I was privileged to serve at Hanford for 8 years as a Fed, and it's unprecedented what's happening right now. And so it raises the question of what is inherently government function? Typically, that's contracting and nuclear safety, at least. But we've seen, 4 or 5 layers of project management that are questionable whether they're necessary. I think that's going to be a kind of the place where we're going to start, are the places where it's obvious. And we've talked about contractor assurance systems, filling those gaps. I think this is a time where EFCOG and other kind of collaborative, cross-functional business and cross-company established formats and forums are really going to be powerful in helping solve that and working with DOE in collaboration to make sure we don't have gaps, to make sure things stay safe, to make sure that we continue to deliver this mission with public confidence. And that's going to be a challenge. And I think that agility and being prepared for anything, and then sharing the lessons learned as a group of companies in basically this industry, I think is going to be critically important. So that not only is it's not only going to be important, it's going to be what they want. It's going to be what the client demands. They're going to want that consistency to bring those efficiencies and share best practices more than ever.
Yeah, Michael and DJ, I want to loop you guys in on this too. As you think about your projects, how do you see your projects, across your portfolio, kind of navigating this changed relationship?
So I think they all are navigating it. I think that's a really important piece. So a couple of things to think about. So if you think about how we eliminate unnecessary steps or increase agility, and you go back DJ's use of Copilot. We've talked a couple of times about if you pull DSAs for essentially similar activities across the complex and you put them side by side, you realize they're almost all very different, but they actually fulfill the exact same purpose. So when you think about the opportunity to have consistency in that implementation, that's an opportunity for AI to look at how we drive consistency across, which enables us to leverage reuse. And, at the risk of Jessica throwing something at me, consistent implementation while allowing for purposeful differences is something we talked about a lot in the NNSA. It's how you leverage the capital that you have, the human capital that you have. So I think as we look at how we drive consistency, the enterprise approach that many of us have talked about today across, that allows you then to leverage the human capital that we have left in more productive ways. If you think about, orders of magnitudes, what we're talking about, at some level, I think EM is down about 50% of its federal workforce, right? NNSA, a smaller percentage, but a big number. And you know that it's never evenly distributed. You have some field offices that were already undermanned by 35% that now took another 25% cut. So it's in pockets, it's really extreme. So to find a way to exercise and utilize that human capital across the enterprise in a more effective fashion, consistency of implementation really is, I think, key for that. And we're seeing some of that between field offices and frankly also between sites and how we leverage our connective tissue a little bit as well. I do think also that we've, as a community, we have focused on and talked about shifting to a more systems-based oversight approach for decades. And again, never let a good crisis pass you by. Take advantage of a good crisis. It's a real opportunity for us to think about systems-based oversight, creating a more mutually beneficial partnering relationship built on trust and mutual respect and the expectation of compliance, leverage the human capital that we have on critical elements where that oversight is really essential, or as JD talked about, really focusing on those things that are inherently governmental. If I was still on the other side of the table, I would have every person I have left tagged to an inherently governmental function, so that if anybody asks what they did, I could point you chapter and verse under the statute as to why they have to be here. Otherwise, they're at risk. And if we don't think that way as a system, we're not helping each other out. So I think I would approach systems-based oversight because we have to. I drive commonality across while we allow for purposeful differences, because the sites and systems we have are not all identical, but we could probably get 80% commonality in an awful lot of those things. And then you could move oversight personnel between sites and have them actually be effective instead of to have a massive learning curve because it's a totally different language.
DJ?
Marty, the only thing I'll add to all the other comments, which I think every one of them is spot on, and that is when you think about the reduction in the government workforce, the one thing that will not reduce is the 535 members of Congress who always have a question. That's not going down. And someone still has to answer those questions. And so when we think about what's inherently governmental, there are things that can be done inside the DOE that says, hey, I believe that this is inherently governmental, and I don't have to do kind of all the transactional type of oversight and insight that they do today. But when one of those members of Congress calls them over and says, I want to understand why this particular project is in the ditch, and I want to know all the numbers to the penny as to what you spent and not spent, it's not going to be me or Heatherly or Jeff or Jim or Mike or JD who has to go over to the Hill and answer that question. They're not coming to get us. They're coming to get our government partners. And so I think we have to always be thoughtful about how do we co-create the type of information that they need to do their inherent government job. And that's about working together on what type of dashboards do they need? How can we make them automated so that they can pull the data without having to do data drills? I mean, how many of you love doing data drills every other day? Okay, it happens. But part of that is because of what happens from the stakeholder perspective outside of the department. And so I think there's opportunity for us to help and work together on what's the right reporting information that they absolutely need, and what are the more automated ways that they can get the information so that they can answer those questions. So I just want to add that piece of that as a dynamic we always have to think about, is what happens outside of the department.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things that we've talked about a lot here as we've looked across kind of at the 10,000 foot level is that we are kind of coming to the valley part of the EM acquisition cycle. And it kind of lets us take stock and take a breath and examine kind of, how things are going. And as we think about the end state contracting model, and Heatherly, I'll maybe start with you on this one. One of the original main tenets of the end state contracting model was to bring new players and new entrants into the EM market to make the barrier to entry a little less daunting. As you talk to partners and you put teams together and you bid EM contracts over the last 5 years, have you seen that play out?
So yeah, we've seen some of that play out. So there's two real mechanisms to bringing new entities into these contracts, right? One of them is to bring somebody new into the LLC. And bringing in new players into the LLC can be pretty difficult. I know we use past performance and we say it's evaluated similar or the same, but I will tell you as a contractor, we don't see that. So one of the ways we've recently tried to introduce somebody into our contract is at West Valley, where we brought in Geosyntec, and they were brought in for a niche specific scope, which does make it easier, I think, from a past performance standpoint for evaluating that. And what's nice about it, one, they were a great partner in transition. I'll just throw that out. They were very helpful in the 30% design we had to do for the big dig for WMA1. And that's very unusual for a transition to do a design package. So super helpful in helping with that initiative. And so, they've already taken some ownership of what the scope that we're going to be moving into. And so I think if you can bring in contractors that are new, somewhat new to the industry, then you can really show that you're bringing really specific talent to get very specific scope done. And then the other ways to bring them in is through teaming subcontractors roles, and I think all of us do that pretty darn well. And I want to give two examples. One is with Different by Design, DBD. So BWXT, Fluor, and Amentum have been using DBD quite a bit, both at Savannah Riverside Liquid Waste and at Hanford, to really model the processes and really have a better understanding real time what's going on with those processes, and then modeling as well to really see the art of the possible. And they've been fantastic in helping us with that. Now, it's really easy for us to bring in small businesses because then their fee is not coming out of our fee pool. So in another scenario at the ITDC contract for Hanford, we were able to bring in a big company, which was DuPont Sustainability Solutions. And we use them, and they've been actually very helpful on something we hadn't even planned on using them for at Hanford. On the there was a chemical safety issue that came up, and they were able to help us really do a study on that and really come up with a good solution for it. So, but my thing to like Jack Zimmerman and Aaron Deckard, that comes out of our fee pool. We'd be willing to bring more big companies in to do very specific scopes of work that are outside of the typical DOE industry, if we didn't have to necessarily share that fee with them and not necessarily have to bring them in through the LLC. And then once they get a record in DOE, then it would make it that much easier to then consider them for the LLCs later. So I know it sounds like I'm being a greedy contractor by saying that, but I'm really not. I'm being practical. So I think that's an opportunity to improve it even more than what I think of the examples I've already given.
Well, I plugged our panel into Copilot and it looks like our time is up. So please join me in thanking our esteemed panel. I have two requests. One, please mark your calendars for the 2026 National Cleanup Workshop, September 12th through the 14th, right here. We'll see you back 1 year from sort of today. And two, if you haven't already, take a moment to thank your local community partner, right? One of the big important tenets of this conference was that this partnership is a three-way partnership. This is a partnership with our federal partners, our contractor partners, and our community partners. And it's been heartening to see over the last decade that this conference really embodies that in our discussions and the way we solve problems. And as I look out across the stalwarts who've made it here to the last session on the last day, it really is a mix and a reflection of that partnership. So thank you for sticking with us. We'll see you next year, and thanks for a great conference.